information about the Africa Private Sector Summit. But before we commence, I think an important thing we need to do is an introduction of which media is here. I believe there's a microphone around, so if we can have that microphone, some of the media here can introduce themselves so that we can get a catalog, official catalog of those who are here so we can follow and track the reporting. Thank you. Whilst we wait for the microphone, I believe someone can help with the microphone. Whilst we wait for the microphone, let me give you a quick structure of the press conference. So I'm going to introduce myself very quickly, then we'll move over to quick summaries of the proceedings, of the perceptions of how the distinguished gentlemen and ladies on the podium, how the interpretation of the APSS, how the 4 days has come out. Then the next thing, after which we will then go on to ask some questions, get the press to ask questions of these three people. Dayo from Nigeria, our maritime consultant expert. Dayo, yes, you. If you can lift your hand so the press knows how to capture some of your thoughts. Dayo, if you can lift your hand so the press know how they can capture. Thank you very much. So then Janine is sitting here. She's part of the APSS organizers. You can get her full name, designation, everything. She's at the table here. And then we have Foster as well. He's also seated next to Janine. So these three will be interviewed after the podium. Those on the podium speak. Then we will then move on to Q&A from the media, and then we'll close. So it's exactly 10 to 3. We need the introduction of the media, who is who. It's very important for our records. So if we can have that. If the microphone has gone round, please. If not, you can use the microphone on your table.
Good afternoon. Hello. Good afternoon. My name is Ankumo Kokwo. I work with Ghana News Agency.
Hello. Okay, so my name is Anisa Kisimuku. I'm a City FM and City TV.
I'm sorry, we didn't hear that.
Anita Kisimuku with City FM and City TV.
And the previous one was?
Mokokwa Anku, Ghana News Agency.
Okay, GNA, okay, City FM, City TV, yes?
I'm Rosemond Boatin Adai, GH1 TV.
Okay, and thank you. And who else?
Sally Ampim, GH1 TV.
Sally?
Ampim.
GH1 TV?
Yes.
Okay, great. Is that the media that is here? Okay. And of course, our able AAU team. All right. Great. Thank you. All right. So what I'm going to do now is we'll have a formal introduction of the APSS. My name is Emmanuel Benza, head in media. So, but Dr. Sam Ndoga, Dr. Sam Ndoga, not Dr. Sam, Dr. Sam Ndoga will be presenting a brief of what APSS, and then I'll take over. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon to all of you, members of the press who are here with us. I will continue to just acknowledge everybody else here, so all protocol observed since we've been running for the last 4 days. I will not go ahead and name the different dignitaries up, but as we get interviewed, you get to meet who is who in the room. When you look at the concept of the Africa we want idea, what has really become important for us to consider is a platform that brings together people from various walks of life, people from various disciplines under a single roof, so that the cross-pollination of ideas would really result in this hybrid approach to actually coming up with solutions The one thing you know about us as Africans, as well as conferences and summits of this nature, is we've been very good at diagnosing our problems. And usually we go home after that. So what we have done by creating this platform was really to say, how do we come up with something different? So Africa Private Summit is really for us to come up with a concept that says, if we take the challenges of Africa into our own hands, what are those solutions going to look like? But the second aspect that we think really distinguishes us from most platforms has really been around bringing young people, young minds. If you look at our statistics, Africa is a young population, and young people tend to be at the periphery of things. We happen to be one of those elder-driven continents, and which has its place. But we also realize that given the fact that the future is digital, the future is artificial intelligence, the future is the computerization of everything from our device that we all carry to how we do life, that means the future is going to be very young. Given that this is where life is heading, it is proper for us to bring into play young people to now really be part of everything that we do and everything that we're becoming a part of. So what you are really coming to today is an opportunity to really interrogate how we started with Series 1, and this is Series 2. Series 1 was around righting the wrongs of doing business in Africa. On the threshold of the success of that summit, we decided to come here to Accra, Ghana, and have this Series 2, by the way, which was almost by popular demand, if you like, on the one hand, but an intentional series on our part to say we need to leverage on that success to really discuss what has been our theme here, awakening the sleeping giants in Africa towards the Africa continental free trade area. So that's really why we seated here today. But this is Series 2. We sitting here already planning Series 3, which will be the first quarter or so of next year in Kigali, Rwanda, which will really look at how we can now envisage this idea of highlighting how young people can play a prominent role going forward. So that's just to give you an idea of where we're going based on where we are today at the success of what has really been a fruitful day. If you're not part of the conference, I need to let you know that there were a number of groups that sat today and came up with ideas based on the presentations that were done at this conference on the way forward, which are practical, implementable ideas that can be turned into projects towards redressing the challenges that we are facing. There are not too many summits that will end there, but that's how we end today, and invite you to be part of our celebrations and say, I think this has been an amazing summit to be a part of. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sam Ndoga. So for the records, Able Press, Dr. Sam Ndoga is with APSS organizing team. I think at this stage, we will cross over to the podium and have members of the podium introduce themselves. It's always easier to hear it from the horse's mouth, very quickly who they are, and then we'll proceed with the overview of the conference. So if we can start with you, Mr. Wendell. Introduction and then who you are, and then we can go into you as man, and so on. Thank you.
Greetings to you all. My name is Usman Toure, the ambassador of the University of the Gambia.
Greetings. My name is Dr. Thomas Mensah, inventor of fiber optics.
Good afternoon. My name is Kabur Ganna from the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
And good afternoon. My name is Clement Osamu-Akon, representing the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce, but I want to acknowledge the presence of my council members. You are welcome.
Hello there, Margaret King is my name, part of the APSS.
I've been introduced already, Sam Doga, part of APSS, but just for the record, here I am. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Benjamin Achampon, the co-chair of APSS. Thank you.
Thank you very much for making that introduction brief. So let's start off with anyone on the podium who is free to offer their views on the important takeaways that you would like to give to the press on how the 4 days has been. What are some of the important takeaways that you'd like to take? So anyone is free to volunteer. I'm not going to choose anyone. So please go ahead. Okay, please go ahead. The mic would be better, please, if we can have the mic. All right, thank you very much. So I believe Dr. Thomas Mensah would like to speak. Dr.
Hello?
Thomas Mensah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
By the way, this is one of the most important conferences on the continent because of the implications of the deliberation that took place in the past 4 days. And I'm so glad that APSS has provided this forum for us and all the key speakers here to come and, if you will, first of all, identify the gaps between the implementation of the Africa Free Trade Agenda. First of all, the Africa Free Trade Agenda will not go forward without innovations and improvement in the infrastructure that we have. Somebody buys something from some country, we are relying on the poor roads that we have. I think Rwanda has better roads. Poor roads that we have in all the 50 countries. So this is very, very significant. That is why we've been pushing for the high-speed train to be implemented quickly in Ghana. And as I said yesterday, I'm grateful for this platform. For the first time, I have designed the high-speed rail for DR Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo. This high-speed rail, named Patrice Lumumba, TJV, Train à Grande Vitesse. Patrice Lumumba Express. That would be the 5th bullet train in the entire Africa. And this goes from Kinshasa all the way to the borders of Eastern Congo. We need this. And of course, Ghana is doing the bullet train. I'm working with Peter Meu, the Ministry of Railway, to implement this one. So with Ghana's bullet train and the Patrice Lumumba bullet train, that would be 5 bullet trains on the continent. Morocco has one, as you all know. Ethiopia has one. Kenya has one. And Senegal has one. We hope to have about 8 of these trains crisscross Africa. And this will awaken the giant on the continent and make the intercontinental free trade agenda reality. So Africa, with a $1 trillion market and 1.5 billion people, the whole world will look at us and see that Africa, the giant, has been awakened. Thank you.
All right, I do want to follow up from there.
Thank you very much for that very passionate rendition of how you see the APSS conference. It's important always to get people to see the passion. Even on the 4th day when people are very tired, you see that they still have that passion. It means that something important was happening. Thank you very much for your intervention, Dr. Mensah. Please go ahead. Let's have a lady.
Just in continuation of that, the takeaway from this conference, we've been talking talk. APSS came up and said, we're going to do beyond that. And this conference, we have actually done it, showing the way forward in terms of coming together, talking about the issues in Africa, and then showing the way forward and actually doing it. So in this conference, we've seen that happening, especially on day 4. Started out with a big conversation, all right? Honest conversation about ourselves. We have a lot of resources, a lot of brands, all right? A lot of human resources, natural and all that. And so let's not allow them to go to waste. Let's wake up, all right? Let's put all of this together. And then one of the areas is agriculture, a need for it, for us to be able to grow our food, what we eat, okay, build where we live, and provide for ourselves what we need. All those are coming up, and then, of course, the practical steps on how to do that. A lot of experts that we have in the continent and in the diaspora, with the different sessions that we had today, basically to show the way forward. What exactly do we need to do? We've heard all of this. We know what the issues are. How do we step up to do it? And so the folks came together and crafted a plan, action plan, a way forward. So after this conference, we are already rolling up our sleeves and we are putting some actions into implementation. So that's the takeaway, and quite a bit of them.
Thank you very much, Professor Margaret King. The actionable points is probably what you, the press, need to take away, that this isn't just a talk shop. It's about coming out with action-oriented results. It's not the usual workshop that you hear, because this week we know that there were a number of conferences that were taking place. Some of those conferences, we know people from those conferences decided to leave and come and attend this one, clearly because of what they were going to come and get here. So it's now at this point that, please, Ghana National Chamber of Commerce, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. I want to commend the youth for participating in this program. I've attended a lot of programs for some time now, but today what I'm seeing here shows that the future lies in your hands. AfCFTA is the way to go. There's no dispute about it. This forum has been very successful for the past 4 days, even though we might have some little constraint, but in every forum you might certainly have some constraint. Not until we come together as Africans, we cannot get to our destination. There's a lot of resources available that we have to tap and move ahead for the success of this continent. I think that some of the key issues that we made mention has to do with agriculture, just as my sister King said. The AfCFTA brings about industrialization, and we need raw materials. And so we certainly have to identify some of the key raw materials that we have to produce within the continent so that we don't necessarily have to import them. There are few ones that we don't have them, we will certainly have to. But for industrialization to go on well, we need to produce the raw materials so that we have cheaper cost of production. We also mentioned about ICT, and you know it's the way to go. You cannot do away with that. A lot of people are even doing businesses on the internet. Now you move around here in Ghana, you have the youth people doing a lot on the internet. You cannot have some physical stores only working, but the kind of business that goes on the internet, it's huge, and we need to look at that direction. We are also looking at infrastructure development. I think they were key, among the key issues that we made mention. And if you look at that area, when you develop our infrastructure, it has a long-term benefit. And I think that this forum seeks to address that. We are also looking at ease of doing business. We have to build a very good institution to make sure that things are not done the way we used to do. We must change our attitude, have different set of mind towards the future. We are not going to remain the same after this forum.
No.
And a lot of things have been said around it, and the private sector must work together to see the future of our continent. That said, I believe that we are also looking at putting some monitoring and evaluation team together with all that we have said and the action plan that we're going to take going forward. We have to evaluate our steps and know whether we are moving in the right direction. Where we need to come back to table and look at it, we have to. But not until we all do it together. No single country can do it. But then we can also not wait for everybody to get ready before we set on. And so the few countries that are ready will take off for others to know that we are really going to take up the challenge. Let me tell you, nobody will do it for us until we do it ourselves. And I know that we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for that. Yes. So if we can have you, sir, if you can introduce yourself, or very quickly. Okay.
Yeah.
For the press.
Let me do it again. My name is Kabul Ganna, and I am from the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I think most of the things that I wanted to say were somewhat said by earlier speakers. The one thing that attracted my attention, I would say, is the fact that the private sector is talking about jobs. Actually, I thought this was usually what government talks about in meetings of this nature, how to create jobs. And although they don't really create jobs as such, but for the first time, actually, not for the first time, but in this meeting, I think what I learned is that all these young people trying to bring in some innovation, start business or scaling up business, have in the back of their mind, are we creating enough jobs, actually? And in the discussions, even privately or even in this meeting, I've heard that the private sector is very much concerned, not just about business, but also about society itself. The other thing I want to say, and this perhaps is the feeling that I got from many of the attendants, is that the CFTA, they all are waiting for the CFTA. They want to do business with other African countries. West Africa wants to do business with East Africa. South Africa wants to do business with North Africa. And they're tired of waiting for the CFTA really to come on board. I think each time, each day passes, we're losing a lot of opportunities. I think the CFTA has reached a level where it has to quicken its pace so that we Africans today really come closer, do business with each other and support each other. The CFTA would not work without solidarity. The CFTA should not really be a platform where business exchange with business without really thinking of also helping those countries, those businesses that are also struggling. Because the world of competition is a world which will create winners and losers. And we shouldn't have any losers in Africa. We shouldn't allow to have losers in Africa. And I think this is what I sensed today, yesterday and the day before. And I would urge you to take this line and go forward. I'm sort of eager to await for the third series of the summit. Thank you.
We have 3 more people left to speak. Benjamin, then Usman, and then Mr. Wendell. So maybe, Benjamin, if you'd like to give us your perspectives of the summit as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Benson. I'm sitting right here and I'm looking at the room, and I remember when all these ideas started. And it's so amazing to see something that began between an older generation, Mr. Andy Wendell, and a younger generation, Benjamin. And it has translated into this. And today, seeing the younger generation coming to take this whole thing and run with it. Some of us, we wouldn't have gone to the diaspora if opportunities were given to us. Having stayed in the diaspora for some time, you realize that that is not your home. No matter what it is, you will come back home. The challenge that we've had is that many of us are there and we want to come back home. But when you come, the environment is not conducive for you to do business. Your own brothers and sisters are looking for ways that they can dupe you, to cut you corners, hike of prices. And as I said yesterday, the attitude towards how to do business is even very poor. But at least there is an awakening. People are understanding how to do commerce, how to pay for services. Now this forum, one thing, as previous speakers have said, I see the younger generation. And this is what we want to press onto the older generation. Don't drop the baton for the younger generation to bend down and pick it and run. Make sure that if you are handing the baton, hand it properly. Make sure that you are holding on to it before you leave. At the end of it all, I would say this has been a very successful event forum, and I'm looking forward to more series. And people like us, please, we're going to do whatever that it takes to turn this continent around. We can do it. I believe it. I believe it. I believe it that we can turn this continent around. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much, Benjamin. We have Usman Toure and then Mr. Wendell.
Thank you very much for having me here. And first, I must say, it all started from a phone call that I received from, I call him my dad, actually. Oh, sorry. Yes, it all started from a phone call that I received from my dad, Ade Wendell. First, he introduced the APSS to me, and I was like, yes, but what is this all about? Because throughout my advocacy, it has always been about young people. Is this about young people, or what is it about? And when I was coming in, there was a bit of confusion, because for the past years, I've been to gatherings, and I will hold the mic and not even to understand what to tell my audience, because they are either 3 times older than I am, or the best will be 2 times older than I am. But one thing that I've realized here is young people are beginning to take up responsibilities. And from the presentations that have been going on for the past days, I believe that most of us have graduated from being critics of the situation to being a part of the solution. And I appreciate all the young people here today and who have presented ideas and the time that we've taken to network among ourselves. We've been receiving cards from one another, exchanging contacts, and that is the future of the continent. For far too long, we have been very good at the things that we do at an individual level. Gambians in the Gambia had no idea about Ghana and what Ghana looks like. And we were not working on dialogues to develop solutions that will bring change across the continent. But Ghanaians will be doing things in Ghana, Kenyans will be doing things in Kenya, and there is no medium that will put all of us together. Now that we have the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, one of the things that it promises us is an integration for the first time of its kind, where we have a medium to trade with, we have products to exchange, we have skill and idea transfer among young people who are the future of this continent, and we must harness that potential. If we do not use it as young people to build the future that we want, it will be hijacked by individuals whose sole interest is to maximize profit in the continent at the expense of our own people. So taking up this responsibility is a must, and young people must be in the forefront. And what I've realized here is we are all ambassadors today in this building. When we leave here, let us multiply ourselves as much as we can, because there are millions of Africans out there who have ideas, who have skills, and yet they are not heard. They don't have this platform today. They don't have a medium today. And to the old generation, to the responsible individuals here running big companies, leading organizations, please, not all the young people here are after financial resources or after financial gain. All we need is how do we get there? We just need people who show us the way, that if you use your resources, your skills, your ideas in this way, you can get to the top. And that is all that we ask for. I hope that we will continue to have this intergenerational dialogue to shape the future that we want as young people of the continent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Osman Toure. And before we get over to speak to Mr. Wendell, I want to really underscore the need for the press to speak to this young man, Osman Toure. Osman turned down a scholarship from the West, saying that he wants to stay in his home country and help educate his people. We know the debacle that took place in Ghana about a month ago, when the young people were flocking down to the Accra International Conference Center at an Accra jobs fair. We know some of the challenges that came with it. And a lot of you, our Ghanaian media, you reported on it. I think media houses like City did great work reporting, leading it on the front page and so on. Please speak to this young man. We need to hear voices of the youth from other countries about what they are doing, so that it can also motivate some of the other younger people in this country. At the end of the day, AfCFTA is here. It's about cross-border collaboration, relationships. So let's, please, you're going to have issue with me if you don't talk to this young man. Osman Toure. So please make a note of his name, Osman Toure from the Gambia. He is one you need to talk to. Thank you very much. Finally, we turn over to Mr.
By the
Wendell.
way,
Yeah.
Usman, I invite you to go to Silicon Valley of Ghana. That's one of the most important systems we have set up at the Kofi Annan ICT Center. And we are definitely going to highlight you and show you, because we are teaching the young people in Ghana and all over Africa how to take the baton, as was said earlier, because I have 30 subjects there. And any of the subjects, from artificial intelligence all the way to oil drilling, I bring commercial drones for precision agriculture and let the kids touch a drone, dismantle, assemble it. So you can be part of this and take it, to your country. Now, I just want to touch on one little subject that was said, which is very important: the industrialization of Africa. This industrialization subject was well explored by APSS. But back to this Silicon Valley of Ghana, we have a roadmap for industrialization. And one of the key things we mention in there is the ability to take the iron ore, we're talking about raw materials, iron ore in Ghana, and turn that iron ore into steel. This steel is very important. All the cars you see here, Uber, SUV, they are all made out of steel. So unless we turn that iron ore into steel, we cannot be part of that industry. Now, what we want to do is not just turn, because even bridges have steels in them so they don't collapse. All the commercial buildings have steel in them. Residences have steel in them. So steel has more application. And what we propose in the Silicon Valley of Ghana book, I hope all of you can get one, is after turning the steel, we will use the steel to make container ships in Ghana, to make container ship, just like South Korea does in South Africa. And so that proposal, that's what industrialization really means, taking the raw material and making things that are of value that we can sell. And we will make these ships that will take crude oil all over the place. So we're going to do it. Thank you.
Then finally, we turn over to Mr. Wendell. Please go ahead, the chairperson of APSS.
Thank you. Thank you. And greetings to all of you. Excuse me, it's been a rough 4 days and days before. But I'm delighted that you all are here. I'm equally delighted to be here. Firstly, let me thank the government of Ghana. The president couldn't make it here. He designated his Minister of Trade, and he was represented by one of his colleagues. So we'd like to express our thanks and appreciation to the governor of Ghana for the support we've gotten from them for this conference. We'd also like to say a special thanks to the president of Malawi, who served as our keynote speaker. We're grateful to him for finding the time to have done that, and also exhibiting the examples of trade between his country and a neighboring country. I think 2 or 3 other neighboring countries to his country. So we'd like to thank him for that information, establishing the importance and value attached to trade between African countries. I'd also like to express special thanks to former President Obasanjo. Unfortunately, there's a major conference taking place in Europe, so he could not be here. But I'd like to tell you something, share with you my conversation with him. When we reached out to him And he got in the line. First, he wanted to talk to me. He wanted to find out who the people behind the APS is. And then we had a lengthy conversation, about 40 minutes or so. What was interesting in that conversation was that he did not ask a typical question of the big boys. He didn't ask the question, who will be there? After I got through ranting about what we were trying to achieve and we needed his presence, he simply said to me, Wendell, you are preaching to the choir. The men you reference here that you like to be on this big conversation platform made their money on my watch. Now, how many presidents would you speak to and they would not ask you who has confirmed to be there before they will confirm to attend? This is a very important aspect of that I like to stress out. It is not who will be there to validate your presence. It is the subject matter that validates that you will be validating. So we'd like to say a special thanks to him. We'd like to express the same thanks and appreciation to Dangote. I guess if I was in his shoes, I would do the same thing. He is in the process of opening his factory, all right, and his office had indicated through Mr. Mansour that he would try to be here, and then later on they said, look, it looks very tight. We had ongoing conversation to almost the last day, or the beginning of our conference. So I'd like to say thanks to him and to the many others that we tried reaching to be here. The conference was intended to bring the big guys, some of the past and present presidents, to sit on this podium and to engage on how collectively we can begin to talk about transforming the continent in a more constructive and engaging way through by the private sector. The great United States that we all rush to today was built by a few families. They had the hearings of the government officials. It is important to mention this. We need to do the same thing on this continent to engage our people who have made it. The likes of Dangote is in the process of completing the second largest refinery in the world. The second is a door opener for lots of other types of feedstocks needed for his factory. How can other African countries be a part of that process? Across the continent, we have all types of minerals. How do we begin to convert those minerals to semi and finished products for the use on the continent and for export? How can we sit down and discuss logically the economies of skills and its application in the context of AfCFTA, in the context of the RECs? Africa has, according to UN ADB report, Africa has something like, in savings or deposit for that matter, something like $5 to $6 trillion. And the figure I'm giving you, that's about 2014, 2015, thereabout. How can we address these issues? How can we begin to sit down and engage in a very constructive way, a working, healthy relationship between the private sector and government? How can all of the stakeholders, academia, how can we get academia involved in designing the curriculum for the continent, for the private sector, for government to function?
should academia remain an afterthought in our policy development? The answer should be no. So part of the exercise that we have undertaken that came out of our first conference, Righting the Wrongs of Doing Business in Africa, we're able to get the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce, represented by Mr. Kebu here, and the executive director of the Association of African University, to formally sign an agreement, okay, for collaboration. That document carries a number of key components. One, recognizing the state of African universities, we want to establish a trust fund for the continent to revamp the universities so that they will be on par or even better than some of the universities outside of the continent. We want to look at a healthy relationship between the Chamber of Commerce at the local level, the national level, and the universities, so that the educational system is tailored to meet the demands of the national economy. So you don't have universities just putting out students or graduates, okay, and at the end of the day, they have no jobs. We also came up with the Bill of Rights for an enabling business environment in Africa. If we truly want AfCFTA to succeed, if that is the true intent of the AfCFTA as well as the REX to succeed, then the business community must have the enabling environment. And there are a number of key areas that we should consider as enablers. Infrastructure, whether it's telecommunication, whether it's road network, whether it's shipping, using the waterways as well as oceanways to transport our goods and services across the continent, whether it has to do with the free movement of people, the passports, right to residency, and all of these are all enablers, including common currency. We must address this issue of common currency. We must, I repeat, we must address this issue of common currency. It should no longer be a political game. It is a continental game. And that continental game must have a winner. And that winner is the common currency. There should be no reason why we should be continue to act, whether it's French currency, whether it's Naira, whatever else you want to do. And guess what? We have the backing on the continent. We have gold. We have platinum. It is a key enabler. So we have to address this at the earliest. So, what is this conference all about? It's about identifying the enablers. And it is about bringing the stakeholders together, regardless of whatever cap they wear, whether it's academia, whether it is the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce, whether it's the National Chamber of Commerce, whether it's the labor organization. Mr. Clements and I visited with the labor people in this country, all right? And we discussed this agenda. You know, whether it is CSOs, we all have a common task, a common goal to achieve at the end of the day. Without our collaboration with government and all of the bodies that we have mentioned, including the newly established African Business Council, AfCFTA, I'm not afraid to state it, I will say it, and I will say it boldly. The REX protocols, the AfCFTA protocols will fail. Without the successful implementation of the protocols signed by all of the heads of states at the regional levels, at the continental levels, if we do not act on these things, after the Rex protocols as it relates to trade will fail. So the enablers must be taken seriously. I will stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wendell. Just to underscore what he said, that the African Continental Free Trade Area will fail unless we pay attention to the regional economic communities and the protocols, especially the protocols that exist, because some of them have not been working. We can speak to a lot of them, but we don't have time right now. But one of them, which you probably may need as background, one of them is the Freedom of Movement Protocol, which would allow a lot of each and every African citizen to move across the continent. Less than 14 member states have signed and ratified that Freedom of Movement Protocol. It was partly the subject of this discussion here, that up until you have inventions, innovations, and so on, if you cannot move it freely across the continent, there's no point. So we need to be urging our governments, wherever we are, to make sure that they also ratify the Freedom of Movement Protocol. And for our press, I think the Ghanaian press, whom some of us know quite well, this is not just a business story. The Africa Private Sector Summit is a developmental story. It should not be relegated to business news solely, because the conversations that have come out from it all speak to development. After private sector, youth, entrepreneurship, women, renewable energy, all these things are developmental issues. They are not just business stories. So please, we want to really underscore that so that we get better perspective on the reporting. It is very critical going forward. So on that note, one of the things I guess that did not come out from this panel was the very important issue of blue economy. And I have Dayo from Nigeria, who's a maritime consultant. I think Dayo, he's around. Dayo, if you're around. If Dayo is not around, maybe someone can call him. Dayo, if he's in the corridor, someone can call Dayo. Then maybe we can switch to Janine, because if some of the press you will recall earlier, I indicated that after the members of the panel on the podium speak, then we'll switch to 3 people. One was Dayo, Janine, and then Foster. And the press could ask questions on them, because they were participants at this APSS for the 4 days. Someone is going to try and get Dayo, but in the meantime, Janine, I guess what you could do is offer your also perspective. Okay, we have Dayo who's coming. So please hold your thoughts on that. But just prepare that, your perspective and the way forward in a way that the press would also understand. So Dayo, welcome. So Dayo is a maritime consultant from Nigeria, and he was a moderator and participant throughout the 4 days. Spoke very critically and openly about a lot of issues that were cross-cutting along the APSS thematic issues. So Dayo, one of the things that we want to hear from you, I think, because the blue economy, it is something that we didn't really touch on the podium, about the centrality of that in the development and the implementation of AfCFTA and also the Rex. Given your experience, what is it that the press needs to know about, number one, your experience, your perspective of the conference, and then secondly, how you see the blue economy as something that the press needs to begin monitoring in a very serious way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Once again, my name is Adedayo Dumoye. I'm the CEO of Think Farm Consulting, based in Lagos, Nigeria. My perspective about the blue economy and this summit in general. Firstly, I believe that APSS Summit is an epoch event, and the reason why Africa is going to succeed is because of the transgenerational handshake which this summit has offered. It's rare to see its kind across all the conversations that I've been having on this subject, especially the regs and implementing African continental free trade. It is quite important that we understand the background of Africa and where we need to be and how we need to get there. And very readily available, and it's also in everybody's face, that this continent is young, it's rich, and it's full of potentials. And when those potentials are given first opportunity for expression, then it creates the innovation that we've been always asking for. Naturally will be the cause, will be the result. And APSS Series 2 Summit deliberately gave the platform for the ideas to come up and the opportunity for the implementation of some of the subjects that have been discussed. Essentially, we mentioned on this podium and different platforms that the APSS Summit offered how the youth are already doing what they know how to do best, which is to innovate against all odds. Dr. Neil Thompson mentioned some very cogent points around what different Ghanaians, Gambians, Nigerians are doing in the tourism sector. And I believe going forward, what we should be talking about is how do we recognize and celebrate these guys and make sure that we have 30,000 of them across board. That is one of the reasons, one of the ways in which we can make and own just that single industry, the tourism sector, for a start. And that plays directly also into the blue economy conversation we are having. It is not a new subject, but it's relatively new. It is young. And as we wake up to it, we must wake up to it with the realization that it affects all the facets of our life, and it is important, and it should be in the front burner. Another perspective that I want to add to it is this, that as we have this conversation, we must have some metrics at the back of our mind. And it is those metrics that will drive the implementation. What can we do tomorrow? What can I do tomorrow that is going to add its own quota towards the actualization of AfCFTA? Honestly speaking, the youth, if given the opportunity, will achieve the Agenda 2063 in the next 20 years. I believe that, but we must also recognize that therein lies our strengths. And the strength is in a collaboration between those who are there right now and those who are coming behind in the future, and ensuring that that handshake consistently happen every time, all the time, with the metrics that would ensure that it is in our face and we know and we can self-correct whatever goals we set for ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I love that big word you use, transgenerational. That's one for the media. Linking both the young and the old together. That's a very brilliant rendering. Thank you very much for that. Janine, if you are ready. Yeah, so similar format. Your perspectives of APSS, and then if the media are noting, we would like to invite you to also pay attention to these three in particular, so you can also ask them questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Janine Nicole. I'm a public health specialist. And can you hear me? Can you hear me? All right, thank you. Again, I'll repeat, my name is Dr. Janine Nicole, and I'm a public health specialist, a researcher and an academician based in South Africa, Stellenbosch University, and as well as a faculty member of a School of Public Health in Rwanda. So I'm from Rwanda, but I'm also part of APSS. So it's a joy for me to be part of this meeting. Like I said, I'm a healthcare professional, a doctor. The half of our population, it's key. Health is part of development. Without a healthy population, it's not going to be realized. I think this is an element that we need to put into perspective when we're talking about implementation of AfCFTA. We need to look at all health elements that are required to make sure that the African continent will reduce our burden to infectious disease. We've got people are still dying because of malaria, because of HIV, and then as well non-communicable diseases. The young people are also, being affected by non-communicable diseases. So from my professional side, that is an element that is very important for us to be able to achieve the implementation of AfCFTA. Yeah. And again, while I was traveling, when I came here, the test of PCR, I was so amazed to see from one country, from South Africa to Ghana, I had to pay $50 or $60 in South Africa to do the PCR test. And come here, do another PCR test, $150. And I'm sorry to say it wasn't really a PCR test, because a PCR test can be not given within less than 5 hours. If you came as a 50, and none of you, I doubt it was a rapid test, yes, which is also okay to be done. But if you see already, if I had as well to travel, let's say, to Nigeria, to add another 150, how are we going to do the trade? These are the things that we need to look as enablers for, the AfCFTA to take place. We have to harmonize. Yes, COVID is important. We have to make sure, we maintain the security of our nations by protecting each other, and then as well abiding to protocols. But we can't, have prices that are somehow not harmonized or, irrational. They won't make sense for a young person who would want to do business to pay almost 3 times or 4 times the capital that was like to use for investment. So it's an important element, and I think it was discussed here in our conference to see how we can improve the enablers for tourism and so forth. But another point that I would like to bring that I came out from APSS, it's a rebirth of mindset that is needed to create the pride, the African pride, that somehow has been lost. I'm not old, I'm transitioning out of Osman age. I'm still, but for some of us who have lived in the diaspora, although we keep on shuttling back home, there is a reality for young people where we tend to think that we need to be like the West. We need to own that pride as African to make sure that made in African product can only be promoted and bought by ourselves. So that requires a bit of a rebirth in terms of mindset. And this is something I would say as a practical example or a case is in Rwanda after the 1994 genocide. It required us as a country, people, to define again or to redefine or revisit who we are by giving ourselves that pride about a Rwandese, not about the tribe as how we were defined, but Umunyarwanda, which means I'm a Rwandan. That boosts us. Wherever you are, a Rwandan will still stand. And I think that those are the drivers, the enablers of some of the good stories about Rwanda, and obviously when we come to Rwanda, there are more. Osman has been there. Those are examples to say that surely Africa can change, where all the enablers, good governance is in place, and the young people are well positioned. We've heard that Rwanda is among the countries where ministers are not in the 50s. They're in the early 30s or late 20s. They are making decisions. They are honoring their country and their future. And that's what we want. That is all about APSS, that's who we are, about honoring intergenerational transfer of knowledge, intergenerational transfer of skill, but at the same time of keeping the identity. I want to repeat that part. Let us not lose ourselves. We are still African wherever we go. Not Rwandan, but Gambian. We are still African, and we need to kind of protect that, safeguard that. The last point of it is about, for the effective implementation of FTCA, as an academician, we need to revisit our education system. I've taught and I continue to teach. The education part of it is about teaching and learning. We've been producing so far, people are not fit for the demand of this continent. The same for the implementation of AfCFTA. We need to create an education system that is contextual, relevant, and efficient to not the West, but to our own people. And it's an opportunity for the private sector as well. It's not the government side that need to finance or develop the education sector, but it's a kind of a collaboration between government and the private sector. The education does not take just one family. It's a community, which means from the president to somebody to the village, all of us, we have to educate. When it comes to research and development, we don't need to rely funding coming from Bill Gates. I'm not saying that we don't need his funding. We do for global agenda. And we need to define what is the global agenda versus the African agenda that speaks to economic development, that speaks to AfCFTA in our interests. We are talking about vaccine. You know, we should have access to vaccine, but the lenses are not the same until we start manufacturing, until we start to produce. Then we can have an eco power when we talk about these global policies. But again, receiving grant from outside, there's always some string attached. We tend to bend on the priorities of the funder. They might not be clear in the protocol, but we know when you sit, there's always an agenda that you are pushing, and sometimes we don't follow what we are taught about research integrity. Sometimes we don't apply it because somebody has financed it. So we need the private sector to finance the research that we do so that what we produce can be consumed by our own people and the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Janine. And we are happy to read that ahead of the climate change conference in November, your president, Kagame, actually drives his own guests rather than having a whole motorcade. That's inadvertently also helping reduce carbon emissions. We're very happy to see that. We hope that more presidents will emulate that as well. So thank you for that, Janine. Foster, over to you. And then after you're done, we'll go over to Frank, Dr. Frank Ngugieni, to finally then offer his also candid viewpoints on APSS, and then the floor will be open for questions to the press. Thank you very much. Foster.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So,
I gotta go.
What I have taken from this few days of interacting this summit is to realize that there are two different things between knowing you are a sleeping giant and realizing that you are a sleeping giant and then know what to do. We all know the problems Africa faces, but then it's not causing us to make a change. So what I've learned these few days is to realize that we can, and not to be always pointing fingers to the problems, but to be part of the solutions. And one area we also realize is that Africa, we know there are a lot of illiteracy. We know though the majority of the youth, which will be an asset, are still the liability that the continent potentially has because of the unemployment problems. So what do we do is to utilize the ICT and digital infrastructure that exists to help solve the unemployment problems. We have a lot of artisans who are not able to utilize this infrastructure, but the youth need harnessing. We know and we acknowledge that we don't have the right attitude, but what we're seeking from the older generation is to harness our potentials and use them to solve the unemployment problems and the inefficiencies that exist in the workings of the informal or the non-formal sectors of our economies. We also got to know that there's a need for multi-sectorial approach in solving an unemployment problem through the harnessing by the older generations. So we realized that there's a need to work together with everyone using all the tools available to enable us solve the problem that we all faces. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Foster. And in just 2 minutes, Dr. Frank Ngujeni, if you can also offer your candid viewpoints on. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just to underscore that I'm the youth of the ESTA generation, and today's youth is the elders of tomorrow's generation. And we all know that we are here in different countries because of the meeting that took place in Berlin in 1864-65 that lasted 6 months. That's why we have Gabon, Benin, Uganda, Togo, and all these countries. And the African Union and the leaders before, including Kwame Nkrumah and Julius Nyerere, who were fighting for independence, realized that it was going to be difficult to remove the borders. And it's a task. However, it's recognized that the African Continental Free Trade Area will actually be possible to remove borders, at least for trade. Maybe politics, no, maybe other things, but at least for economic trade, that will lead to economical independence. And without our economic independence, we cannot have full independence. We can have political independence, but we do not have economic independence yet. And it is the struggle. In fact, the Constitutive Act of 2000 of the African Union recognizes that having attained the political independence of all countries, the AAU, which was established to fight against all the colonialists and apartheid, had to change from OAU to AU. The next fight, which is embedded in the Agenda 2023, is the attainment of economic independence. And that's why I want to conclude by urging that on the thematics that have been picked, which I've just seen here, we add sustainable minerals development, because it is the minerals that has shaped our collaboration with the rest of the world. If we don't sustainably and responsibly manage our mineral resources to feed into our industrialization, we won't achieve anything. So I just want to thank you for this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And on that note, this brings a close to the press conference. We now invite the press to ask some questions. GH1, I see you are leaving. GH1, yeah, please call your other press colleagues to come inside. Thank you. We just have a few minutes and then get some questions. Thank you. All right, so, okay, so I believe I can release the members of the podium. Thank you very much for your attention. If we can have a round of applause. Thank you very much.